Lahav, welcome, music director designate of the Israel Philharmonic. It's a pleasure to sit with you and have a small conversation maybe. And let me start off with a simple question. What's so special about an orchestra sound? Why is it so appealing to you as a pianist?
I would say even more than the sound, it's the energy. It's the feeling of so many musicians playing at the same time and feeling the same feelings and having the same emotional impulses and also the same sound vision. And that kind of energy, that kind of collectiveness of emotion and so on brings something unique to the music. And as a pianist, I always felt that when I play the piano, even though the repertoire is incredible, I miss this side of music making. And so I always played chamber music as much as possible. And when I started playing double bass, I wanted to play in the orchestra as much as possible because there was something very captivating.
But what could you define the difference between creating your own sound on the piano and then creating this huge train-like sound with an orchestra?
Obviously, the piano is sort of a neutral instrument, and even though you can create the illusion of many different sounds, not only an illusion, it's really a lot of different kinds of sounds, but it's an illusion in the sense that you try to imitate the orchestra, ultimately. And in the orchestra, you have endless possibilities. And first of all, you have the different groups, of course. For example, when the whole first violin section is playing together, it's one kind of music making of a group of musicians playing together, and then you have soloists in the orchestra like the oboe and clarinet and so on, and you have more feeling of a personality, of individuality when they play. And there are so many ways of expression and so many colors that the orchestra can bring out that a pianist could never match that, and that's the reason I wanted to conduct.
You used to play the double bass. Do you feel it's important for a conductor to have experience to play an instrument as part of an orchestra, or for you as a conductor to be part of an orchestra?
Definitely. I can say, for my own personal experience, I cannot even imagine what kind of a conductor I would have been today without this experience in the orchestra. In our case, especially as someone who played with the Israel Philharmonic many times as a double bass player and also knows the musicians from the inside, through the bass. But in general, as a conductor, for so many reasons, I find it crucial, at least to have a feeling of what it's like to play in the orchestra. And in my case, to be a string player, it's very informative for a conductor, because when you read the score, maybe as a pianist, of course, you have some kind of advantage when it comes to reading a score, obviously. But then you want to know what are your options. How far can you take it? What are the risks that you can allow yourself to take? What are the things you must insist with the musicians? How far can you push it? So on. If you have this kind of experience from the other side, then you have a clear advantage.
Do you allow yourself to make mistakes, so to speak, and ask the musicians during rehearsal to do something and then find out it was a total mistake and allow yourself to correct it?
Absolutely. It's not a mistake. If I ask to do something, if I experiment, it's part of the process. And definitely, sometimes I might have an idea in my mind, I try it with the orchestra, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. On the other hand, if it doesn't work the first time, it doesn't mean it's not good. Sometimes, and that's exactly where the experience comes in. Yeah. Sometimes you have to know where it goes, and even if the first time is not good, you have to immediately identify, okay, this is going to be the right way to do it, but we need to work on it until we get it. And so it's a give and take. Sometimes, as you say, it's wrong. It just doesn't work. You try over and over again. Like after 6 times, you say, okay, let's change it back. But it's a process, and you need to stay curious and try out new things.
Do you think that being a guest conductor in an orchestra and being a chief conductor in an orchestra makes a difference of the way you work in the rehearsal, the way you rehearse? Would you demand more from an orchestra that you are the chief conductor, or or more for an orchestra that you're a guest and, you know,
I think inevitably when you start working with the musicians in a more close kind of relationship and more often, and you know them, and you have the responsibility of a chief conductor, you start working slightly differently. And on the other hand, even when I'm guest conducting, I'm always trying to get the best results, and I never give up, because I don't think that the orchestra wants to give up. I think the musicians of the orchestra, of an orchestra like ours, all want to play the best concerts they can. So if as a conductor I come, I try something, it doesn't work, and I say, oh, that's okay, it's good enough, let's continue, just because I want to be nice or whatever the reason is, the musician would usually, not as a lot of young conductors would think, they would be happy not to work, but they would think, well, what a pity, we can do better than that. And then they start to give up slowly because they don't feel there is much need to work and give the effort. So for that reason, and also just to make the music as good as I can, I never give up.
I have, many times I've been asked, what does this conductor do? Why do you guys need him? You can play without him. Or they would say, oh, he looks really good. What do you do? What's it like to manage a rehearsal? What are the basics in the rehearsal that you are aiming to achieve?
There are many things. I think that the idea at the end is to make sure that the whole orchestra and myself are thinking the same way about the music we're playing. Because maybe I see things one way, maybe another conductor sees things a different way. Maybe the orchestra, the musicians have their habits, the way they're used to play a certain piece or a certain style. And maybe it's not just a habit, maybe musicians, for example, soloists in the orchestra actually thought about what they're playing, ideally that should be the way, and they have an idea. And so the rehearsal is a process in which we all want to make sure we're thinking the same way, as I said. And of course, we work on details and getting the quality better and better and so on. But the idea is to make the conditions so that in the concert you can allow yourselves to be free, spontaneous, put on the side basically everything that you worked on, not think about it on every second, but think of your musical intentions and the emotional intentions, phrasing and so on, and timing and intensity, and every concert is slightly different. But to get this freedom, you must know the rules, so to say. What are your limits? How far should you go here? What is the kind of sound that you need here? So on. Is this an intensive moment or is it a moment of relaxation? Is this something we should make sure that it's heard, or we should make it smoother? You know, we're talking about these things and sometimes find the solutions together. Sometimes somebody has to make a decision. That's part of the reason there is a conductor. And so at the concert it's a moment of freedom.
So if you were to conduct the same piece in Israel, in Rotterdam and Vienna, would it sound totally different or similar in a way?
You would recognize the piece, obviously. But yes, you would get very different results in the attitude to the music, in the sound, I think, above all. And it's part of the beauty. I feel very lucky as a conductor to be able to make music with different people, with different approaches, and learn myself about it, and experiment also myself. The same music with different approaches. And I think it makes me a better musician at the end, this kind of different experiences.
In the past 5 or 6 years, the Israel Philharmonic has accepted about 40 new members, or I would say 40 to 45 new members, all of them under the age of 40. Do you feel more age appropriate when you come here because of that, or does it make a difference?
Well, of course, it makes a difference in the sense that I know a lot of these musicians because you, for example, we grew up together, some of us studied together in the academy or even in school before that. And it's like making music with friends and making chamber music. But I must say that even before that, when I played double bass with the orchestra, or when I played as a pianist with Meta and so on, this generation that in the last few years changed, they really raised me as sort of the child of the orchestra, and supported me and pushed me also to conduct the orchestra. And I feel very grateful to this generation. I will never forget them, and it's, for me, they're always part of the orchestra, even though the orchestra is very young at this point, and it's definitely felt. You know, it's this motivation and the feeling that everybody really wants to give as much effort as possible to give the best results. It's very much felt.
I'm sure you've been asked this question many times, but the Israel Philharmonic had only one music director for almost 50 years, Maestro Zubin Mehta, and you are following his position. Do you think that you can change? How much change can one bring after such a long period of time of being managed by one person?
First of all, the change is happening the moment another conductor stands in front of the orchestra. As you know, you can play the same piece over and over again with one conductor. When somebody else comes, even without saying anything, just by perception and body language and whatever it is, the orchestra sounds a little bit different, reacts a little bit different. And this is something that's already happened. And now there is this, I feel the very special relationship I have with the orchestra, both as an Israeli and someone who grew up with the musicians, and as I said, and someone who really feels this mentality and understands the attitude and the musical attitude and the necessity for music making in a very particular way, in a risk-taking way and very direct way. I feel very natural in this connection with the orchestra. So even though it is giant shoes to fill in, obviously, and Maestro Mehta has been a great mentor to me and supporter for so many years now. At the same time, as I say, I feel very natural. I feel it's a very organic process.
Do you have any dreams for the orchestra? Or any goals, achievements, or something that you only now can imagine, and then in this period of time you're going to be music director, that you wish to have with us?
I want to make sure that the orchestra really stays a part of the whole country and gets to play to as many people as possible, inside of Israel, outside of Israel as well. Because there is so much for us to show, I believe, as musicians, and we bring really a special message. As you know, this orchestra was started by refugees in the 30s. And this is something we should never forget. It means something. This orchestra came as a necessity, and not just a political necessity, as a human necessity to survive, and not to just survive and live, but survive and live in a fantastic way, make music and make art and play for other people and be a part of the community. And this is something that I want to make sure that we don't forget and that we even deepen.
Do you feel that in the cultural spirit of nowadays in Israel, there is a place, there is a need for a symphonic orchestra?
First of all, you see the public is coming to the concerts, fortunately. It means it is very much relevant. And yes, I think that in our time especially, it's required, maybe more than ever, first of all, to focus a little bit more on something that is not just materialistic. And of course, we're also a nation of startup and technology and so on. But we shouldn't forget that there is this other side of listening, of learning, of curiosity in an intelligent way, in a spiritual way. So yes, absolutely, I feel there is a necessity, and I feel it's our duty to really stay very much a part of the community.
Many times we hear the complaint that from the stage, we see only gray hair. in the audience? Do you have any magical solution to attract
So the
younger
gray hair
crowd?
shines more. That's the reason.
I mean, it's such a question that I hear from colleagues all over the world. How do we attract younger audience? How does one do that?
I think in most of the world, the audiences are not the youngest people. Some places it's different. There are different ways to approach it, and I don't think there is a magic solution, because if there would have been, everybody would do the same thing. But first of all, is staying relevant. As I said, staying a part of the community and not forgetting who are the people we're playing for and who are the people we want to play for. Make the music accessible, not in a way that many people think of modernizing it in a way, making it electronic or arranging it. No, the music shouldn't be changed. That's not the way. But making it accessible, for example, as Bernstein did in the 60s and 70s with his fantastic lectures on TV, and made millions of people really fall in love with music as children still. It's this kind of making it accessible, making people, first of all, not be afraid of it, and not thinking that if they don't know enough, they wouldn't enjoy it, and understand that there is more than nice melodies to music, and there are so many different layers and so many things to enjoy. And it does require attention just as much as if you want to read a book and enjoy it, and if you want to enjoy theater, anything there is. You need to give something from yourself. You need to sacrifice your energy and your intelligence. You need to be curious, and it's not just it's just coming to your direction and you just sit back and enjoy it. You need really to listen actively. And of course, the more you know about the music, the more you can enjoy, the more layers you can enjoy. So I think these are, for me, the most important things to remember and work on.
Next week, you're going to collaborate with some musicians from the orchestra in a chamber music concert for the White Night of Tel Aviv. And what do you think about playing chamber music with the musicians that are playing in the orchestra? How do you feel about that?
This is definitely something that I want to do more and more now as I will become music director. It's something that I started in Rotterdam with the Rotterdam Philharmonic on a regular basis, and I absolutely want to do it here. First of all, because it's fun to play chamber music, but also for two more important reasons than that. One is that I want the public to get to know the individual musicians of the orchestra in a more intimate way, because this orchestra is a great orchestra as a collective, but the individual musicians are wonderful, each one of them. And this is something I want the public to enjoy as well. The other reason is I feel as music director, playing chamber music with the musicians just makes this collaboration and connection much, much deeper, much more interesting, and much more of a collaboration. Because very often you sit as a conductor in front of the orchestra and basically you're leading the rehearsal, you're running things, you take decisions and so on. And this is really the moment to hear what the musicians have to say, what they have to propose, how they're playing, listening to them, following them. So it's a very different kind of collaboration. And then of course the idea is it would affect the way we make music together in the orchestra.
Absolutely. So in tonight's concert, we're going to play the Berlioz Symphonie Fantastique. Personal note, I remember my first time ever playing it with James Levine conducting it. And I remember this feeling of craziness going through each movement, and you know, this performance left such a deep impression on me. And I would like to ask you about the piece. What do you take of it? What's maybe give us one or two moments of this piece that you're amazed by every time you can perform it?
First of all, I have to also say that I remember the first time I played it on double bass. It was with this orchestra, with Maestro Zubin Mehta, and it was the very first time I played with the orchestra. And it's a very memorable moment for me. Yes, but this piece, as you said, is completely crazy. And I think after Beethoven is a giant step for a composer to really put out everything he has inside on the paper to this extent. And of course he admired Beethoven, and he took so much inspiration from him. And there are even things and moments that resemble the pastoral and things like that. But it's so edgy and so young and confused, and in a way very modern still to this day. And to think that the composer had this experience of taking drugs and hallucinations and so on, and then just making music and just not really knowing where he's going, and sharing with the world his imagination and his crazy thoughts. You could say it, it could have been a rock musician from the 70s or from now or whatever it is. And yeah, so it's a very human experience to play this piece and to think about it.
For me, my favorite part is the second movement, this crazy waltz that I remember thinking about it and thinking, how could one dance this crazy waltz? What's maybe your favorite, or I don't know if favorite.
But this waltz, I feel it's important also to understand. It's everything for me. Everything is in his mind, and in his mind, crazy things are happening, and it's not really people are dancing. Everything is sort of in the background. The waltz is marked piano usually, and there is a moment. This is one of the moments I really like, that the orchestra is playing the waltz. Most of the orchestra, the strings are playing the waltz, and you can almost see couples coming in, going out, and so on. And at the same time, the woodwinds are playing the idée fixe. Mm-hmm. This is for me really a very personal moment, almost like a cinematic moment of really that you can almost see him completely detached from everything that happens. You can see in the background people dancing and so on, and he's freeze, and there is just one thought in his mind. I think it's really composed that way, and for me it's a really remarkable moment.
I find it very difficult to play this piece without conveying the audience these messages. Do you feel like the same, or do you find we have to work hard to dig into the details in order to make the audience understand this story, this background story of the piece?
I think this is definitely one of the examples of, as we say, programmatic music, where you must know the story of the music to fully enjoy it. It's not just abstract. It really tells a story, and it's revolutionary in that sense, of course, and inspired so many musicians later on to do it. And definitely after you know the storyline and so on, it's not enough. Then it's really the moment of the musicians to get everything. And it's so detailed. It's so crazily detailed, but in the most essential way. If you don't do the details exactly as they're written, it's just another symphony. It's just another piece. There's so much in the details. Just the way the melody is being played in the first movement, the first time. Everything is unexpected. He always writes exactly how he wants the melody to be played. And when you do it, it sounds like the craziest thing in the world.
I'd like to ask you a few short questions, or you can decide if you want to answer them or not. Who are your great inspiration musicians, or somebody that inspires you even today?
Well, I'm lucky to have many, and first and foremost, Zubin Mehta was the first conductor I've seen on international league, and definitely one of the people that inspired me to become one, and supported me for so many years. And playing with him taught me so much about how it feels to play in the orchestra and like it, yeah, and enjoy it, and be safe, and be in a comfort with the conductor. It's a great feeling to play with him, and it's something that I'm to this day trying to get as much as I can. Then of course Daniel Barenboim, still to this day one of the most important people in my life. I learned so much from him. I don't think one can learn more than what I feel I learned from him, and the kind of influence and inspiration I got from him. And there are other fantastic musicians which I'm going to rehearsals and listening, and I'm very lucky still to live in Berlin and experience all these wonderful conductors and other musicians that come to the city and conduct and play and so on, and make music with some of them. Yeah.
If you could invite a person, not necessarily a musician, for lunch to pick their brain, who would it be?
Living or the...
Up to you.
If not living, then Charlie Chaplin.
Explain.
First of all, it's the childhood legend for me. And somehow, the way he managed to make his films, to play in them, to make the music, to direct them, to finance them, to edit, to do everything. This kind of incredible vision and at the same time experimenting with so many things. At a time where things were still new and you still had to invent the rules, basically. And to do it in such a perfect way and get to a point where comedy, slapstick and so on is always combined with art and with deep thoughts and philosophical thoughts. Yeah, this is, for me, still a great inspiration.
Wonderful. And last question. Do you have any cultural recommendation? A book, a play, a show, a movie that you would like to share?
A book, I'm now reading the third book of Yuval Noah Harari, which I hope everybody is reading right now. It's a crazily important book, and of course the first two as well. Yeah.
Lahav Shani, thank you very much for this, and good luck in the concert tonight.
Thank you very much. Good luck to you.
Thanks.